one of the ideals of cure is easily comprehensible. And then people try to justify homeopathy to people who they're trying to encourage to join them, and they start bringing in string theory, and they start bringing in entanglement theory, and they start bringing in chaos theory, and not to mention quantum physics. And probably none of them know very much about any of these things anyway, but it sounds good. And it's just one more version of blind people with science.
I think the beauty of homeopathy is in its simplicity. And I think homeopathy is simple. We complicate it.
What do I actually do with my patient? I sit them down and I say, let's look at this. And in a safe place where you metaphorically or actually hold their hand while they look at their stuff. In other words, like curing like, they actually mirror their stuff. And then they, oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's not so bad, because most of the problem was because I repressed it and suppressed it. They look at it and then stuff comes up and you look at it and it's like that mirror mind, the like curing like, the remedy acting like that sort of mirror. So if you're a Buddhist and you're doing mindfulness, you just stay with it and observe it. That's exactly what the remedy does. When you give someone a remedy, they stay with it.
Hi homies, it's Marcus Fernandez here, founder and director of CHE, the Centre for Homeopathic Education. After 5 years of releasing a brand new podcast episode every single week, Eugenie is taking a well-earned break and has kindly asked me to look after the show and spend some time with you all. Over the coming weeks, I'll be bringing you some inspiring conversations with guests from across the homeopathic world and beyond, along with the occasional tasters from our CHE Pro membership library, what many of our members affectionately call the Netflix of homeopathy. Whether you're a seasoned practitioner, a student, or simply someone who loves homeopathy, I hope these episodes leave you informed, inspired, and reminded of the incredible potential of this medicine we all care so deeply about. So thanks for joining me. And now let's get on with today's episode. So welcome, Tony. Lovely to have you.
Great to be here, actually, Marcus. I hope you can hear okay. I hope you can see okay. There we go.
Yeah, we can hear great. No, it's great to have you here, Tony. And God, Tony, I've known you a long time, probably 30 odd years. And man and boy. I've known a long time. And obviously, you taught for CHE for such a long time since we started in 1998. I don't actually think you never taught me. You taught Emma, but you never taught me.
That's what we've spoken about. And I'm not actually sure whether it was a trip I made up to Birmingham that I actually had a link with Emma, or
it was in London. I think it was. Yeah,
was it the Practical College in London?
That's right, Practical College. Yeah, I don't think you taught her that much. It was towards the end of a training, but I know you taught her. So I feel like I missed out, Tony. But obviously. We've done a lot of webinars together and different things, so I know your style, and people just love your Materia Medica. And I know I've always said you should write a book. Still waiting for that book, Tony. Still waiting.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think it's going to be a long wait. Thank God for sort of modern technology and not having to write a book. Yeah,
absolutely. So, Tony, the question I always ask everybody when we do these sort of conversations is, how did you get into homeopathy? What was your journey into homeopathy? We always say that homeopathy pulls us in. You don't find it pulls you in when your time's right. What's your story?
It's a very interesting bit of synchronicity here, Marcus, because as you know, it's the summer solstice at the moment. And yesterday was the day they actually put aside. But today is the day that the Druids actually will do their ceremony. I mean, the 2 days overlap, in fact, in terms of the actual solstice moment. And the interesting thing was that my very first link, and this was prior to homeopathy, a friend of mine had just come back from India, and he was into the Western sort of occult tradition, among other things. And he said, look, there's this interesting guy who's doing public talks down in the Caxton Hall in London. Caxton Hall is, off Parliament Square, just behind the Houses of Parliament. And he said, do you want to come along with me? I mean, I'm going to go and see him. He does public talks. And he's the chief druid, the old chief druid. I mean, Thomas Morn. And this was 1970. So we went along and went into this middle-sized room, but completely packed. There were 2 or 3 seats going, but basically packed. And there was Thomas on the dais, sort of waiting for everything to start. Anyway, my friend who'd just come back from India, no seats available, so he said, squats on the floor. Thomas says to him sharply, find yourself a seat. Don't squat on the floor. He said, don't squat on the floor like an Indian, actually, to what he said. He said, don't squat on the floor. I said, oh, crikey, it's a good introduction. Anyway, we got our seats and sat down, and Thomas proceeded to talk and smoked like a chimney all the time that he was smoking. Of course, in those days, everybody smoked publicly and all the rest of it. And the thing that I don't remember a single thing about the content of the talk, but I do remember this little gnomic figure, totally in control of the situation, loving all the questions that were just thrown at him as if he was just enjoying the interchange that was going on with this really sharp mind. And it reminded me a little bit of the situation you used to get at Speaker's Corner, where somebody would get on their soapbox and talk, and then people, they would throw cabbages at them, but they would certainly throw questions at them. And it honed you up in terms of how you actually deal, with the public and their awkward questions. Anyway, that was the end of that. I went away, interesting, what an interesting guy. Anyway, later on that year, I would plan to go off to India myself, and I had a long haul out to India after seeing Thomas at that first talk. And then I came back from India, and I developed a couple of medical problems, including a hernia, and I had surgery for it. And again, a couple of friends of mine said, look, we've had this surgery. Look, we know this really interesting guy. You might want to go and see him for some treatment. And guess who the interesting guy was that they'd actually also mentioned was Thomas Vaughan again. Fine. I sort of went down to Thomas's house down in East Dulwich, where he ran his practice from. It became also the headquarters where he ran the public talks from after Caxton Hall. And he said, well, it's a shame you couldn't see me earlier before you had the surgery, but nonetheless. Anyway, I had a few treatments from him. That was my first specific introduction to Thomas More and homeopathy. At the end of that, I was going back to India again. I was going to have another long trip to India, which I did. Went back to India, and then came back in the sort of summer of 1974, and went along to see Thomas and just joined his group. And that was it. September 74, I joined his group, and it's a teaching group. It's a specific cohort of people joined this teaching program. To be honest, at the time, my main interest was not homeopathy, although I was seeing him for treatment. It was, if you like that, the Western esoteric tradition balanced out with my love of the Eastern tradition. And that was in September 74. And then those classes continued.
Sorry, Tony, there were classes on homeopathy. That was specific.
No, these ones were specific teaching classes, and it was like a type of self-awareness program, esoteric program. It dealt with, Thomas had a great big picture of Madame Blavatsky in his room.
Okay.
So there were philosophical issue treatment going. And Marcus, it was a long program. It was about 8 years.
Oh my goodness.
We're not talking about a few
weekend course.
We're talking about it was every fortnight for 8 years. There was a summer break. You couldn't miss more than one class. You could miss a class, and someone in that class had to make it up with you. They had to run the class. If you missed two, that was it. You started again.
Wow.
Peter Chappell and I were the only two people who actually finished that whole
8 years
course right to the very end. Even the teacher had changed.
Wow.
At the end of it. But Thomas started in 74, Thomas died in 76. And in the class, incidentally, we had Peter Chappell was in the class, Martin Miles was in the class, his early cohort, and Robert Davidson joined later. He'd been in a previous class, which he'd left to join our class for some reason. Anyway, so Robert was there. But at the end of the year, Peter Chappell are the two remaining people who have stuck it out sort of religiously till whenever it finished anyway. About 8 years.
Where did the homeopathy fit
Right. Apart from the fact that homeopathy infiltrated itself into the teachings anyway, because it does. Thomas also ran homeopathy classes at his home, public ones, but mainly people just drawn in through the Druid Order things. And they ran in parallel. But I didn't go to that many of those. Some of them I went to, but not all of them. And so they ran in parallel. So there were the teaching things of literally his Druid Order long-term teaching, there were the homeopathy classes, and of course there were the public lectures, and they all ran, if you like, on an ongoing basis from his house down in East Dulwich.
And just to give context, people listening, so we're talking about the UK in the sort of early 70s, and just enough people are aware, but at the time, homeopathy took a big blow. There was a plane crash.
The plane crash happened, yeah.
That was about 72, 73?
Something, it was in that general, I don't
Yes.
remember the exact time. Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely.
And the plane crash was the aspiring homeopathic doctors from the homeopathic hospital were going to a conference.
That's right.
Somewhere, I think was in Belgium or somewhere.
Yep.
The plane crashed in Staines, just outside Heathrow, and it wiped out a whole generation of homeopathic doctors. And it was really kept alive, homeopathy, through these classes.
Exactly.
Because there was nothing really else out there. Like
You're
saying,
absolutely.
I just want to give context to that, Tony, because this was a really important time for homeopathy.
Looking back on it, it was quite extraordinary. I mean, it's easy, I look back sort of and think, wow, yeah. I mean, at the time, it was just what was happening.
Yeah.
It was one of these.
You're talking 50 odd years ago. Yeah.
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 The way it was at that point was that Thomas was running these classes down in South London from East
John
Dulwich.
de Monte.
And John de Monte was running them up in North London,
Yeah.
and they were colleagues. John de Monte, his students were Misha,
Norland,
Sarah Richardson,
Yeah.
Elizabeth Danziger.
and also Peter Fisher, Dr. Peter Fisher, who was the Queen's homeopath, who sadly passed away a few years ago. He was also part of that North London group.
That's it.
Yeah.
And basically, 75 and 76, John de Monte and Thomas died. And basically then, to a certain extent, there was an amalgamation of the classes. And Martin took over the Thomas's homeopathy classes for the, literally for public consumption. Then Robert took over. And at the same time, the society was being...
with Martin and Robert Dawson.
Martin, Robert and Peter Chappell and Misha, of course, starting the society. And then, of course, in the end of the 70s, the College of Homeopathy was set up. So that was 78, 79.
Yeah.
The College of Homeopathy set up. And when you think about that, Marcus, I think they got about 25 people in the first year. After a few years, they were getting 120 people enrolling.
Yeah.
And this was prior to major advertising. This was purely grassroots interest in this homeopathy thing.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary, the grassroots, that grassroots fruition that was happening then. And so, and that was the College of Homeopathy. Misha started a college down in the southwest. He'd moved down to Devon. And then the college has just mushroomed.
Yeah. That was the School of Homeopathy.
Ernest started a college up in Manchester a few years later. Rima Handley and Dorothy Hannon started one up in Newcastle. The Classical College started, and they were just sprouting like mushrooms.
But it all came from those two groups.
It all came from those two little core groups right at the beginning. Thomas's group and John de Monte's group that came together, and the next thing it exploded. It was
it was the birth really of the professional homeopath, because it'd been a very medical.
That's right.
That's why it had started, but this was the real sort of creation of the professional homeopath that weren't doctors.
Exactly.
That then spawned all these colleges, and in fact, the College of Homeopathy, CHE, we took it over in 2002, and so we amalgamated.
That's right, and that's where to a certain extent, the goose that laid the golden egg was a bit wrecked, and so you needed to step in and rescue it in a way. But that was bad financial management
on their part. Yeah. But we amalgamated it, and really all the people that taught at the College of Homeopathy, yourself, Mike Bridger, Dion Brett, all the people that carried on really and have carried on. It's in that spirit really, I think.
That's right. And that was the beginning of it. And and then, of course, in the early 80s, George Vithoulkas' influence came in. He sent a couple of people over to, pave the way. He sent Vasilis Gekis, and Roger Morrison came over with Vasilis, and they ran seminars, and then George came over. And, of course, then George started running his own program from Alonissos, but he also came to London every so often to do some teaching as well. And, he taught in other countries as well. George was notorious for saying he doesn't like traveling. I mean, it's true, but he sort of took it on as a bit of his karma, I suppose, and did the traveling. But I mean, he's happiest when he's just in Alonisos teaching on his Greek island, and I don't blame him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So back to that thing about that, what we say that you don't decide to get into homeopathy, pulls you in the time's right. So what for you, when did it, basically, you tell us in those classes, but when was it, when did it really grab you? When was it that you?
Well, I mean, basically, once I'd actually done the studying at CHE,
Yeah.
because actually I then, from being this person which is vaguely interested in homeopathy and had seen Thomas as a homeopath, then I did the course. And then, of course, as you say, in those days, you do the course. And because I'd been involved with Robert and Martin as friends in the order, you immediately get a shoe in into teaching. Next thing I know, I'm teaching,
Yeah.
and I've got more teaching than I know what to do with. And at the same time, I was a yoga teacher at the time after my trips to India. And at the same time, because of Margaret Thatcher, they shut down most of the ILEA, the Inner London Education Authority. They wrecked it. So all these classes that were, queuing round the block to do yoga, they all stopped. And then there was this transition then just to basically doing homeopathy full time, instead of it being homeopathy and
Yoga.
and the yoga teaching.
So when was that, Tony? When did you finish your studies? When did you finish your training in homeopathy?
Oh, early 1980s.
Yeah.
So, I was in the second cohort that went through from Robert and Martin's.
Okay.
The first one had Janice in it, Janice McAuliffe in it.
Both
So,
Janice, yeah.
and
Yeah.
of course, Janice and Martin, this is how it all ties together. Janice and Martin, and of course, Colin came a little bit later, set up the guild later.
Yeah.
And in a way, the guild is, from the point of view of that lineage from Thomas, you could say that the guild that was his line.
Yeah.
Thomas to Martin and Janice
Yeah.
to the guild.
Yeah.
And that included Charles Wansbrough,
Yeah.
Robin Griffiths, and a few other people.
Yeah. So I always find it fascinating because I think we need to know our history in the UK.
Marcus, I look back and I think, crikey, what an amazing time it was.
Yeah.
You see, there was George there as well, but a lot of us were also, clearly there was the whole Eastern tradition, the yogic tradition, the Buddhist tradition. Misha, myself, Janet Snowden, a few others also did the transpersonal psychology training, which was with Ian Gordon Brown and Barbara Summers. And that also became part of the way that homeopaths take their cases as well.
And was that influenced by George Viticulus?
No, not in the slightest.
No.
No, it was a Jungian based, a Saggioli based, but it tied in beautifully. Just that whole, it was just this, talk about an integral mix that was going on there. There was the homeopathy, there was the transpersonal psychology, there was the Buddhism, there was the yoga, everyone was into meditation, of course, as we all know. And that was it. It was just an incredibly rich time.
And also that continues to go on.
Sure.
That influence of what happened then.
Yeah.
Is where we are today. CHE wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for what happened. Look, we talked about Robert Davison. People don't know Robert Davison, the late, great Robert Davison. He just inspired so many. All the teachers that teach at CHE basically were taught by Robert, including myself. He was no Saint Robert, but he was, was he a character? And
exactly.
I remember meeting when I first met him, I was like 20, 21. It's like I never met a character like this. He just turned my whole world upside down about how you saw the world. Not just health, actually, health and well-being, but he liked to provoke. He really liked to shake up your whole belief systems.
Absolutely. And in a way, you saw that line coming from Thomas. Thomas was an iconic, for all of his sort of rooted in this sort of ancient tradition, he was an iconoclast as well. He loved, knocking the conventional approach. He was always going on about woe to these conventionalists as he sort of smashed them down.
Yeah.
So, and I have to just say, I love these sort of maverick types and Robert definitely was had that quality to it as well.
Yeah. But that influence, like I say again, that influenced the next generation. My generation influenced it.
Sure.
To be like that and to have I wrote that in my book, Homeopathy at Home, the intro. I dedicated it to Robin Murphy, but I also thanked Robert Davison because, like I said, if it wasn't for him, he just, like I said, he just changed my whole world, in a great way.
No, exactly. Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So, Tony, I mean, you're very well known for teaching. Obviously, you can teach more than just Materia Medica, but Materia Medica is your thing, really, isn't it? And how did you sort of, the way that you teach Materia Medica is I always think it's like you weave a story around it. The way that you're explaining these states, they're like almost like characters. Sort of, what's influenced your your Materia Medica knowledge?
I think all of that. I know right at the very beginning. Sure, I like the clinical stuff. And funnily enough, now, as I come sort of almost full circle, I actually want the clinical stuff much more. But at that time, I actually that's what I wanted. I wanted to get an image. I wanted to get what's the character of this particular person? What is it? It's not whether a nature has got runny discharges from their nose and they get headaches periodically. It's what does it mean to be a nature What does it mean to be a lycopodium? What does it mean to be? I mean, in a way, it was from my point of view, you could say in retrospect, it was the totality of symptoms. On the other hand, it seemed at the time I had to have a human being, a person in front of me to actually register what are we actually talking about here. And I think that's from my point of view where certainly the Western psychology came in. I mean, the Jungian psychology, what's actually going on here? The four elements, the four sort of psychological types of Jung infiltrated the whole system. And I've always loved that the types, the typology, the elemental aspects, and of course from the yoga tradition, what does it mean to be a seventh chakra, a sixth or a fifth or a fourth, and what does all that mean within the context of homeopathy? Just simply reading a homeopathic Materia Medica bored me to tears. And to a certain extent, I have to say that was George Vithoulkas.
Yeah.
I remember when I first was looking at homeopathy books and going to the classes, there was Thomas, of course, teaching in his own inimicable way. But as soon as Fatax Materia Medica appeared, and wow, this guy actually is talking about mental symptoms in a way that actually means something. It was very, very interesting. And then George, as we know, George's way of presenting here, he presented this sort of an image and a personality profile of a person. Kent did it in his own way, but Kent was still very sort of, medically oriented.
Yes.
He was very much of his time.
Yes.
Whereas George came along and actually expanded that. I thought, wow.
Yeah.
This is what I find most fascinating. Otherwise, you can just be a sort of keynote prescriber, a few sort of physical generals, and you'll get good results.
Yeah.
But for me, it would have been pretty boring. Now I want those things to confirm.
Yes.
If you like, the mental emotional picture
Absolutely.
of the person. Clearly, now I actually want the whole thing to tie together. I want an integral approach with everything.
Yeah.
But in terms of just my direction, that's why I love the Materia Medica, because you could actually, you could present a story of a development of this person. And
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was going to say, because I think I often say this when I'm teaching, that Materia Medica is a scale, it's a spectrum. It's like there's a progression of a remedy, isn't it? Often through, so you don't have to have basically what I'm saying. You don't have to have everything that's in the Materia Medica. It's like a spectrum. You'll see different elements at different times.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was thinking then of nitric acid. So nitric acid in the early stages, you may see the anger, you may see but then as they go on, it's like you see less of that because it's more suppressing. You get, the ulcers and the body eating itself. So it's a spectrum, isn't it?
Sure. And to give total credit to Vithoulkas here, his stages of development of the remedy were actually, at that time, it seemed unique. The fact that he actually saw when this, and then it was in abeyance, and then developed into that, and then on that, and at any particular stage, the previous stage could have disappeared.
Yeah.
But if you saw that line coming through, and that's where it sort of got so interesting, and that ties in so perfectly with the whole Western psychological approach, where repression, neuroses, pathologies, as a result of in cultural suppressions, family suppression, you name it.
Can I ask you about that? Because so I think it's a really good point. Because, for example, when you go to India, I've been in India so many times and done clinics there and different things, and it's a different way of prescribing.
Sure.
It's very like that, very quick. You have to be because there's queues and queues of people.
And they're brilliant at it.
Yeah, and amazing at it. But then compared to like the West, often we'll take an hour with a case or 45 minutes with a case, or some people do a 2-hour first consultation. Why is that? Is that?
I actually agree. I remember Murray Feldman.
Oh, Murray Feldman, yeah.
At one point, we were discussing this, and Dave Mundy was there as well. And when it comes to these 2-hour cases, I mean, Murray just said, just sheer self-indulgence. So it can go into that. You just indulge in this wallowing, and you completely miss it. How about, what about, but look, there's this and this. Wait a minute, you don't need 2 hours.
No. But where did that come from? I don't think it's that as much as it is now, but it used to be, I remember.
Oh, I think it was because of, if you like, a type of blending of that psychotherapeutic approach, where you sat back and you just let the person talk. Whereas in homeopathy, you've got to give them a remedy. You can't say, come back in a month's time or next week or 2 weeks and we'll keep going with this. They want a remedy at the end of it. And they've spent talking for an hour and a half about their early potty training. Fair enough. But, you need to pin them down. And I mean, as you know, in homeopathy, when you're taking a case, you've got to be a little bit, hey, wait a minute. Yes, sure. Thank you. But how you've got to narrow it.
You've got to direct the case and where the case is going.
Exactly.
And I always think a case taking is like a song. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end.
There you go.
And it's like there's a rhythm to it, isn't there? And I remember Robin Murphy really hammering this home to me, case taking, and he would say, you scan, you analyze. So you're scanning, something comes up, you analyze it, and then you probe it further, and then you move on. And that's and he'd say, where's the party at? Where's the party at in this case? Where's the core of it? But yeah, it's
exactly that. Exactly. Yeah. And you've got to, and of course, sometimes you'll be wrong. You can misjudge, and that just back to Hahnemann. I mean, if you ask me where I put my interest in, I could sum up homeopathy for me pretty well in about the first half a dozen or 10 aphorisms of the organon. The rest of it is almost like padding. I mean, I'm not saying it's irrelevant, but it says it all there.
Yeah.
Why are you doing it? Because physicians first only just heal the sick. But like Buddhism, it's the call to compassion. Heal the sick. Then, okay, fair enough. What's the ideal of cure? Here it is. Rapid, permanent, gentle, easily comprehensible, incidentally, that's gone out the window with some people. Blind them with bullshit, basically, has become an aspect of it. And then, a few aphorisms that just tell you how to pin it down, including, of course, the key one, insofar as you can, the unprejudiced observer.
I was going to say the unprejudiced observer.
You've just got to, and that's where, if you like, for me at any rate, a key issue is the meditational training, the awareness training, that just can you be mindful and aware and non-judgmental as you just observe what's going on. And that's a core issue, certainly a core issue for me.
Yeah, and actually, I think the beauty of homeopathy is in its simplicity. And I think homeopathy is simple. We complicate it. I obviously haven't practiced as long as you, Tony, but I've done it for 30 odd years. And it's that I'm just very simple in my prescribing. I'm very. Somebody asked me the other day. In fact, on this podcast, we had a session with Eugenie and Hillary, Dorian, and myself, and Dion Tabret saying, "What is homeopathy? What is it?" And I think you always got to go back to the principles. Like cures, it's not difficult, but sometimes we can get so off track. When you mention bullshit, I want to come back to that in a minute.
Yeah, we can censor that if you like.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about it because I think it's important. I think because you've got such a wide view and historical view of the development of homeopathy over a long period of time. What's your opinion on all the different things that are happening at the moment around homeopathy?
Well, when I actually talk about, one of the ideals of cure is easily comprehensible. And then people try to justify homeopathy to people who they're trying to encourage to join them. And they start bringing in string theory, and they start bringing in entanglement theory, and they start bringing in chaos theory, and not to mention quantum physics. And probably none of them know very much about any of these things anyway, but it sounds good. And it's just one more version of blind people with science. And what's the easily comprehensible bit is the like curing like. Say a psychotherapist, what do I actually do with my patient? I sit them down and I say, let's look at this. And in a safe place where you metaphorically or actually hold their hand while they look at their stuff. In other words, like curing like. They actually mirror their stuff. And then oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's not so bad. Because most of the problem was because I repressed it and suppressed it. they look at it and then stuff comes up and you look at it and it's like that mirror mind, the like curing like, the remedy acting like that sort of mirror. So like if you're a Buddhist and you're doing mindfulness, you just stay with it and observe it. That's exactly what the remedy does. When you give someone a remedy, they stay with it. Here they are, they've come with this stuff and you give a remedy that reflects that stuff and then stay with it and it cures. It actually sets, because that awareness that is brought, not necessarily a conscious awareness, but that physical recognition or dynamic recognition happens that actually then allows the healing to take place. And of course, then all the other stuff comes up, which you also stay with. So, and that's so simple. If you said it to someone within the context of any other therapy, they said, yeah, it's so obvious. I talked to my friend about it and she gives me a hug and holds me while I tell her and, oh, wow. Yeah, I get it. And the curative, people have said, awareness itself is curative.
Yes.
On one level, yeah. But it can also, homeopathy, of course, one could argue goes even deeper, and like it roots out literally the miasmatic stuff as well. It's not just
it's like the ancestral stuff that you're carrying forward. Well, I mean, just again quoting Robert Davison, there's two things that always really stuck with me with Robert, and he would come with these amazing pills of wisdom, which would just go. It was like taking a remedy in itself. But he would say every time you take a remedy, it takes you back to the place where you can decide again.
Exactly right.
And that's exactly what you're saying. It's like that insight. You get the insight. Now you still have free will. Yeah. So I always say this to students: don't be putting remedies in your partner's tea to try to change them. Or it's like they still have free will, but it's that it takes them back to that place where they can either carry on holding on to it or letting it go. And I always thought it was a really beautiful thing.
It is.
The second thing he would say that in fact, I've got all the remedy here. The remedy. If you have a thing that says homeopathic remedy, like I've got here, arnica, this is not homeopathic. It's a bottle of white pills.
Yeah.
It's the reason for giving.
The reason for prescribing.
Which makes it homeopathic.
Yeah.
And it was he'd say some genius, beautiful.
Yeah. That was one of Robert's things. Yeah. It's the reason you prescribe.
Yeah.
You're prescribing on the way that literally and the choice that you have, ultimately that choice is, do I actually face it or do I not face it? Yeah. It's in a way, it's as basic as that. I face it. Oh, well, all right. I keep the suppression going and I don't. That's the choice in a way that you have.
Yes. And and you have to have the unprejudiced observer. You've got to be neutral in that space. And I think even sometimes, I'm sure you agree, Tony, even in the consultation itself, like you said, people have that insight. And then the remedy is just like continuing the conversation.
Completely. It's like the cherry on the cake. But oh, wow. It's the crumbs. You shake your head at, and I mean, to give, I mean, we're not the only ones who say that. I mean, Sankaran has said that. I remember when he talked about the Barisa carb picture, and the person actually says, God, I feel as if I'm walking on my knees. They had the insight.
Yes.
Haven't had a remedy yet, but they've got the insight.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, totally.
And then, of course, the remedy, we say, gives it an even bigger boost. Yeah, great. Maybe it does. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's absolutely, it's fascinating. And I think, so what do you think then? Obviously, there's different styles of prescribing and there's different ways, and now there's so many different ways. But what's your feeling of like polypharmacy versus, say, the straight classical?
I think there's a sort of a fine line. As we know, Thomas Morne definitely indulged in some polypharmacy. Burnett was not averse to what some people might call polypharmacy. I mean, Dion would say more about this, but just from the actual one remedy, etc., No, what I would actually say about the polypharmacy is from the point of view of, if you like, how it then progresses. Can we just prove the remedy? I mean, we've got combination remedies, we've got polypharmacy. Could we actually do a proving of a
combination?
Or AAA, or carbon silica sulfur? Can we do a picture? Would it be valid to do it? Yes, I'm sure it could be. So, polypharmacy takes us into, I mean, it's not just polypharmacy either, as far as I can see, Marcus. It's that whole thing about the way that the case is taken and the insight that comes out of that. takes us into the whole idea of what do we actually mean by the placebo effect. I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to sort of muddy the water by bringing that in, but when we're actually talking in terms of what's actually going on here? What is this energy going on here? What's going on when we actually talk about being aware and waking up and staying with something and observing something? What's actually going on? We all know that the placebo and the nocebo effect. Yeah, there's an incredibly powerful mental aspect, not just mental, but higher mental spiritual aspect going on. I mean, I have a sort of fantasy whether we don't need the pill at all. We actually just that's my ultimate fantasy about the whole thing. But yeah, and we know, like with all of these things, can be abused.
Absolutely.
And it's as simple as that.
Yeah. I always think that there's a place for everything at CG. We're a broad church. We say, look, all these ways of prescribing are all, again, neutral. It depends on the person who's sat in front of you.
Yeah.
So for the mother that is just getting to homeopathy and goes to the local health food store and gets the teething granules because their child is brilliant, fantastic. But I think when you're learning Materia Medica, when you're learning remedies, say as a student, for example, then I think it's, you want to be learning the action of the remedies, I feel. But also in that polypharmacy, say you got it for hay fever and you take it every year and then 1 year it's not really working. My feeling is often there's one of those remedies that is working, but you don't know which remedy is. So normally you would change potency, but you can't because you don't know which remedy in that combination it was working, and then you're a little bit stuck. So I think every method, ways of prescribing is as equal. It depends on the person who's sat in front of you.
Sure.
That would be my sort of my philosophy. And
yeah, I mean, people get on their high horses about this, but the fact of the matter is, even if you look at, Hahnemann when he talked about, at a point you don't need to give placebo anymore, or Sacklek anymore. Vithulkas will say he will prescribe because he doesn't want people to take another remedy. He will prescribe a tissue salt as far away from the remedy as possible. But it's all pointing to the fact that people seem to need something.
Yeah.
And then it's a question, I think, of just encouraging the person away from almost the crutch that they need this. But maybe that takes some time. Some people it's easy and some people it's not.
I think just for people listening, is this thing we often say somebody's done really well on a remedy, you don't necessarily need to repeat it because it's still working. It's like the pebble in the pond, isn't it? The ripples are still working. But sometimes practitioners feel they need to give something for the people to take away. So they may give them the sugar pills with no remedy on it. So they feel like they're taking something. But that's never.
I don't like that. I don't think I've ever given.
No, I've never done that. Purely because I think people should know and have this.
Yeah.
And I will say you're doing really well. The remedy's still working. And I'll use an analogy, like you said, the pebble in the pond, and it's all rippling out. Let's see how you get on in the next few weeks and see how when you come back. Because you can repeat the remedy if we need to.
And I go along with that. That's why I actually like working with people who are homeopathic students, because I can talk about the remedy that they might have had. Even sometimes, rarely, I'll say, "Look, I'm going to give you this, but I'll tell you in a month's time, or 2 weeks' time." Generally, I'm very happy to talk about the remedy because it's part of their process.
Exactly, and I feel because just to clarify for people listening, sometimes homeopaths won't tell the person what remedy they're taking. And that goes against the grain for me. If you wouldn't go to a doctor's and say, I'm going to give the symptoms, here's this medicine, I'm going to tell you what it is, but take it anyway. It's like, no, I think people need to know. And also, I remember talking once to Francis Truehurst when he did the homeopathic helpline, how many people would phone up maybe in the queue or in a reaction to the remedy, the homeopath had gone away, and they would say, what remedy have you taken? I don't know, my homeopath didn't tell me. Or I've had situations where patients have come and you probably had this, Tony, and say, I used to see a homeopath. So they come in with eczema. I used to see a homeopath, 8 years ago. No, they gave me this remedy. It was great. All my eczema cleared back. And this is the first time it's come back. Oh, great. What was the remedy they gave you? I don't know. They wouldn't tell me. So it's
if we go back historically, to a certain extent, this is because of Thomas. Thomas would not tell you the remedy given. And Robert wouldn't tell you the remedy. No. And Martin, that tradition from Thomas did not. And I was not at all happy with that.
What was Thomas's reasoning for that?
What is the reasoning? He didn't want people interfering with the process of the cure by their own interpretation. You know, you give someone
Okay.
lycopodium and they look at, oh, I'm a coward. Oh my God, I've got flatulence all the time. Oh my God, I'm a bully and all that. No, I'm not. It was along those lines.
Yeah.
But that may well have been a legitimate criticism also of Thomas. He had his own particular way of doing it. And I mean, he was a little sort of magician working away there. And other people would find that not to their taste.
Yeah.
They could see something that they were less happy with. But Robert was saying, Martin was saying, they all came from that tradition where they didn't tell you what the remedy. I was not happy with that.
No.
Simple as that.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with you there. So, what books would you? I mean, sort of coming to the end now, Tony. What sort of books would you recommend? What's your favourite Materia Medicas?
Well, I'm on my desk. I've got a bunch of books here. Those are not homeopathy books. I've got a bunch of books down here. I'll tell you what they are. Actually, I've got Prisma 1 and Prisma 2. I've got Robin's Nature.
Prisma, that's Franz Vermeulen, yes.
Vermeulen's, Prisma, and I've got that Materia Medica, Synoptic Materia Medica 2. In other words, that's his.
Yeah.
And the reason I like those is because literally we were talking about before about the almost like the story. You know, with all of those, there's the picture we have of the remedy and the folklore and the background to it. And it's like his bedtime reading, whereas a Materia Medica is boring.
Yeah.
And so Robin's Nature Materia Medica is a basic textbook.
Yeah.
You check up on things, but it's not what I have as basic reading material when I want fun. I've also got sitting there as well, I've got Morrison's desktop guide and his desktop companion, both of which, the thing about the desktop guide is the clarification, is the encapsulation of a lot of George Vathulkas's teaching. So down here, and I've got, and loads of Sankaran and loads of Jan Shelton.
Oh, Jan Shelton, yeah.
Both of whom I love.
Yeah.
As much as anything, because back to what we were saying before, because of the big picture thing, I can't escape the fact that I like big pictures. I like to have this big picture into which I can put things.
Like an overview, isn't it? Yes, it's the overview. Yeah.
And I've got Dion's book here, which I actually love. A little sort of.
Is that Burnett? But was the Burnett?
Little play for Dion, because I love it because it's so clear. It's such a clear little book. I've got Philip Bailey's Major Constitutional Remedies, and Philip Bailey, as we know, is a Jungian. So basically, we've got the Jungian psychology approach, and of course, George Vathulkas's Materia Medica.
Yeah, so some classic.
I haven't got the Materia Medica Viva, but I've got his stolen Materia Medicas and his talks on classical homeopathy and Materia Medica. Of course, I've got Kent's lectures.
Yes.
Which sometimes I do refer to. I mean,
Kent's lectures.
You can't get away from Kent. Kent is amazing.
Yeah, I always say to students, you've got to read Kent's lectures. So, I mean,
you have to. We've got the lectures on homeopathic Materia Medica, and we've got the lectures on homeopathic philosophy, both of which you have to have them.
Yeah.
And then there's the little sort of checkup books that you just carry around with you. Borica and Fatak are down there. Oh, and Lippi, of course.
Oh, Lippi, Lippi. Yeah.
People talk about Lippi and they talk about the man who knew Materia Medica absolutely inside out and backwards. It's always Lippi that they sort of put right up there at the top of the list of this man who just knew it. Yeah, backwards.
And Andre Sain is a big fan of Lippi, isn't he? Andre Sain in Canada, yeah.
So those are, and of course then you just got Robbins.
Yeah.
Oh, and one book I always tell people to get this, but just absolutely essential as a sort of backup is Yazgur's Homeopathic Dictionary.
Oh, yes.
Absolute. Yeah. Thank God for Yazgur, who did all the nerdy stuff for us and put it in a dictionary. So when people in homeopathy start using funny words that no one apart from homeopathy ever uses, Yazgur's got it defined for us. Yazgur's got a simple. Yazgur tells us what Hahnemann's, if you like, LM potency is all in 2 pages. You don't have to plough through the lot. He's got it there, and it's so succinct. It's so neat. He sums it all up so beautifully. Thank you, Yazgur, for doing the nerdy stuff for us, so we don't have to do it.
Which is great.
Yeah,
that's quite a small list there, Tony, for people listening. a lifetime of Materia Medicas there, a lifetime. But like I said, you need different Materia Medicas, like I said, for different things and different cases that you have. And
Of course.
like I said, I'm reading around. You use them for different things. And I always say we're a bit like lawyers working on a case. It's like we have all our books. And I know when you teach Materia Medica, you always put all your books, have all your books open on the desk,
And then ignore them.
and then you ignore them. You know it,
It's
you know.
it's part of my
Yeah,
my insecurity
yeah.
is that I've got to have them there and then I can ignore them.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
no,
great.
this is true.
So, Tony, as we finish, any last words you'd like to say to anybody, maybe people who are studying homeopathy or just starting out in homeopathy, like as a practitioner, what sage advice would you give them?
It's not just in homeopathy, Marcus. It's in anything that people do in their life.
Mm.
The only, we talk about Hahnemann's first only duty to heal the sick. In a sense, and this is partly because it took me like a time to actually find what I wanted to do. For God's sake, find something that actually speaks to your heart, something that you actually really love to do, something that gives you joy. Don't do it for all the wrong reasons. Don't think you're going to make a lot of money out of it. Don't think that you're going to, solve the world's problems. You might do. Does it make your heart sing? My wonderful sort of transpersonal psychology teacher, Barbara Summers, said, find that which makes your heart sing. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And if you do that, the rest is easy. The rest of it's a piece of cake.
Yeah.
It's a piece of cake.
Yeah.
If you're doing what you love, it's easy. If you're having to grind through it because your mum was a homeopath and she wants you to be a homeopath and you don't really want to be a homeopath, you want to be a rock musician.
Yeah.
Forget
Well, that was
it.
me. I want to be a rock musician. No. No,
Well,
but no, I totally agree. And I was saying this the other day. I mean, silly as love with homeopathy is when I first heard about it.
yeah.
Well, when I first heard Robert talk about it, and I knew nothing about homeopathy, and he talked, and there was something very deep that went on with me when I heard him speak about homeopathy, and the rest is history. So I totally agree with that. I think when you get into homeopathy, it pulls you in, and it pulls.
There's the depths to it.
Yeah.
You can go into any aspect. It just takes you deeper and deeper into what do we actually mean by health? What do we mean by vital force? What do we mean by being the unprejudiced observer? What does it mean? Crikey, for me, wow.
I know.
It's
Yes, exactly. That's it. Every case is different, and I said, I've done 30 odd years, doing it for probably 50 odd years, long time. And here was both of us saying we still love it because it gives us so much, and it just helps you. It helps us. It helps us see the way that we see the world, and it's an amazing thing. So listen, Tony, thank you so much. It was so lovely with you. And get your insight and your wisdom. And I feel very blessed that you teach for CHE and also your life.
Let me make a point. And thank you because you've facilitated what's actually an extraordinary thing happening in homeopathy at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's down to you.
Yeah.
With a little bit of help. Yeah.
But no, thank you. And you've been part of this journey since we started. So I just want to thank you. And also all the stuff you do for CHE Pro for people out there. As homeopaths, we have CHE Pro with our membership. And Tony's often comes on live doing Materia Medica or clinical casework. And it's great having you on there. So thank you, Tony. Thank you so much. And
thank you, Marcus.
Yeah. And thank you everybody for listening.
Take care. Bye.